I was sitting in my bathrobe, damp hair wrapped in a towel, the kind of tired that feels good, the satisfied kind, the kind that comes after a long week finally loosens its grip on your shoulders. Literally. The fabric was soft against my skin, that particular softness that makes everything feel private, contained, safe, like the world outside cannot reach you through it, like whatever you do in this robe, in this light, in this quiet, belongs only to you. My phone was warm in my hand. The apartment was quiet, and I was smiling at my screen like a woman who had absolutely no idea her life was about to detonate. I typed slowly, deliberately, still feeling the ghost of his hands on my shoulders. Thank you for the body massage. You always know exactly what I need. Send. Phone down. Tea. Bed. Warm. I did not know that Felix had left his phone on the kitchen counter when he got home that night. I did not know that his wife Rose had picked it up, the way wives do, casually, the way you pick up something that belongs to your own house. I did not know that she read my name, read my words, read that little emoji I had pressed with my thumb like it meant absolutely nothing. I did not know that by tomorrow morning, one of us would walk out of that office changed forever. Let me tell you about Felix Sizer the way I always told myself about him, because the way I told that story is the whole point. He was my colleague, my project partner, the person 2 desks across from mine who made the office feel like a place I actually wanted to be. That is how I said it. That is how I kept saying it for months to anyone who raised an eyebrow. And a few people did raise eyebrows. I just got very good at not noticing. I led with facts because facts felt safe. Facts felt innocent. But looking back, there were 3 facts I chose to look at and not see. 3 warnings the story gave me, one by one, patient as a folk tale, clear as daylight, that I ignored each time with a smile on my face and a reason already waiting in my pocket. 3 warnings I ignored. The first warning was the coffee. He remembered my order the second week we worked together. Oat milk, 1 sugar, no lid because I always burn my mouth and get annoyed at the cup like it is the cup's fault. He never asked, he just knew. He would place it on my desk on the mornings I came in holding myself together with both hands, silently, without ceremony, without making it a thing, the way you do for someone whose moods you have memorized without ever deciding to. But here is what I only understood later. He did not learn my coffee order. He learned my soul. He learned the difference between the mornings I was quietly stressed and the mornings I was genuinely falling apart, and he responded to both without being asked. That is not a colleague reading a situation. That is someone who has been watching you closely enough to know things about you that you have never said out loud, and has been responding to that knowledge, quietly, every single day. I called it attentiveness. I should have called it what it was. Warning 1, ignored. The second warning was the phone call. When my biggest pitch got rejected after 3 months of work, I did not call my mother. I did not text my best friend. Before I had even fully processed what had happened, before the grief of it had finished landing in my body, I had already typed his name into my phone. He called back in 4 minutes, not a text, a call. He stayed on the line for an hour. He told me things about my own ability that I had never heard said out loud by anyone who mattered to me. And I drank every word down like water I did not realize I was thirsty for. I did not call my sister until the next day. I noticed that. I noticed it and I filed it very neatly under "He is just a good friend," and I closed the drawer on it. But I had just handed him something that belonged to my family, something that belonged to the people who were actually mine. I had reached past all of them and chosen his voice first, and in doing so, I had drawn a boundary around the two of us that I had no business drawing. I was drinking from a well that did not belong to me. I just refused to look at the sign on the fence. Warning 2. Ignored.
The third warning was the silence. On the days Felix worked from home, the office felt like a room with the sound turned off. Not quieter, fundamentally altered. The way a familiar space feels wrong when something essential has been removed from it without announcement. I would sit at my desk and feel the absence of him like a dull, persistent pull in my chest. I would check my phone more. I would finish work earlier and feel less satisfied with everything I had done. I would go home vaguely flat in a way I told myself was tiredness. I was not tired. I was dependent. And dependency dressed up as friendship is one of the oldest, most comfortable lies a person can live inside. Because it does not feel like dependency. It feels like connection. It feels like warmth. It feels, if you are not careful and you do not look at it directly, like the realest thing in your entire life. I was addicted to a presence that did not belong to me. I had built my emotional foundation on land that was already occupied. Warning 3. Ignored. This is the thing about a sweet peach with a rotten core. It does not announce itself. It sits in your hand looking flawless, smooth skin, the right weight, the right warmth, and you keep bringing it to your mouth because it has never tasted like anything but sweetness. You do not find the rot until you have bitten deep enough to reach it. I had been biting for a year. I just had not yet bitten deep enough to find what was waiting at the center. Nobody decides to do what I did. Nobody sits down one morning and thinks, today I am going to build something dangerous with a married man and lie to myself about it for a year. What you choose is so much smaller, so much quieter, so easy to explain away that you do not even realize you're explaining anything at all. It starts with a text, not a romantic one, nothing that would look like anything if someone else read it. Mine was about a reality show, a ridiculous competition we had both been watching, and I sent him a paragraph about the finale at 9:30 on a Tuesday night. He replied in 30 seconds. We went back and forth for 40 minutes. I went to bed laughing. Just funny, just a show, just two people who liked the same thing. The sweetest part of the fruit, the part where the decay has not yet reached the surface. Everything still tasting clean and innocent and perfectly fine. Then came the morning the pitch was rejected. Then came the hour-long call. Then came the day I shared news with Fifi before I called my own sister, and I filed it under good friend and pressed the drawer shut. But the drawer kept filling. The way I started angling my screen away from colleagues when he texted, not because the messages were inappropriate, but because they were mine and I did not want to share them. Something in me had already decided they were private. Something in me had already built a fence around them before I consciously knew a fence was being built. The way I once spent 20 minutes in a bathroom stall genuinely unsettled because I had watched another woman in our office make him laugh, really laugh, the kind that reached his eyes, and something in my chest had pulled tight in a way I had absolutely no business feeling. I was not jealous. I told myself I was not jealous. I was absolutely jealous, and jealousy does not lie. Jealousy always, without exception, tells the truth about what you feel, even when everything else you are saying is a comfortable, practiced fiction. And then he began telling me things about home, not in long confessions, in pinhole releases, a mention here, a sigh there.
The specific way his voice changed when he said, "It's fine," about something that was clearly, audibly, visibly not fine. He talked about the quiet at home, about feeling unseen, about reaching for connection and finding distance where warmth used to be. And I listened, with the full, warm, entirely invested attention of a woman who was absolutely, completely, not even slightly in love with a married man. I felt like a good friend, a safe place, a person who truly saw him. What I was a thief, lifting the intimacy that belonged to his wife one quiet conversation at a time, examining it in the warmth of my attention, and calling it kindness when I put it in my pocket. The worm was already inside the fruit. I had let it in with every conversation, every late text, every private laugh I did not share with anyone else. I just had not looked at what I was carrying closely enough to see what was moving inside it. I need to tell you about a Thursday night in October, because that is where everything that came after was born, even though I spent months insisting to myself that nothing happened. Technically, nothing happened, but something shifted, and I knew it the exact moment it did, and I chose, immediately and deliberately, to pretend that I did not. A product launch crisis detonated at 4:30 when half the team had already left the building. A supplier pulled out, a timeline collapsed. My screen was open to 17 tabs and none of them were helping. I was running on my third coffee and the particular brand of silent panic that looks from the outside like someone who has everything under absolute control. Everyone went home. Felix stayed. He did not ask if I needed him to stay, he just stayed, pushed his sleeves up, pulled his chair to my side of the desk, and got to work like it was the most natural thing in the world. We ordered food around 7. We sat on the office couch, voices low, the whole floor dark except for the light above my desk, forming a small, warm, entirely private circle around the two of us. And somewhere around 9, when the crisis had finally been reduced from catastrophic to merely survivable, I leaned back and exhaled a sound that was half relief and half exhaustion. And Felix, without a word, reached over and placed both hands on my shoulders.
I want to be precise here, because precision matters more than anything else in this part of the story. He did not pull me close. There was no charged pause, no cinematic silence, no moment anyone could point to and name. He simply put his hands on my shoulders the way someone does when they can see that your body has been carrying something too heavy for too long, and he worked the tension out slowly, steadily, methodically, while we kept talking about the supplier fallout like nothing significant was happening at all. 20 minutes, maybe less, probably less. But here is the truth I buried immediately and refused to examine. When his hands lifted, I noticed the warmth go with them. Something in my chest registered the absence like a small, specific, undeniable loss. Not dramatic, not devastating, just a noticing, a wish, quiet and quick and immediately suppressed, that it had continued. That noticing was the moment, not the touch itself, the noticing after the touch ended, the registering of absence. That was the moment I should have looked at honestly and did not. I drove home not thinking about the supply crisis at all. I got in the shower, I put on my bathrobe, that robe, that same fabric I told you about at the beginning, the specific softness against my skin that makes everything feel contained and safe, the bridge between the version of yourself that performs and the version of yourself that simply is, the liminal space, the place where you do not explain yourself, the place where you are most honest, whether you intend to be or not. I sat on my couch in the quiet, and I replayed the weight of his hands like a song I could not locate the off switch for.
and I told myself it was gratitude. I told myself the robe made it feel innocent, personal and private and warm, just a thought sent from my most unguarded self. What I did not let myself see, what I arranged very carefully not to see, was what I was actually doing. In that robe, in that private sanctuary, in the most honest and unguarded version of myself, I was inviting a married man all the way in, past the professional version, past the performative version, all the way to the realest one, and the realest one pressed send. Thank you for the body massage. You always know exactly what I need. I went to bed warm. I slept better than I had in weeks. I did not know that across the city, a woman had just picked up her husband's phone from a kitchen counter and was reading my words one by one, slowly, the way you read something when your hands have already gone cold and your heart already knows exactly what your eyes have not yet finished confirming. I lit the fuse in a bathrobe with a smile on my face from the softest and most private room in my life, and I had absolutely no idea the room was already full of gas. Before I tell you what happened when I walked into that office the next morning, I need 1 second with you. To everyone already subscribed to this channel, thank you. Genuinely, from the bottom of everything. You show up for these stories the way I try to show up for you, and this channel exists because of you. Every single view, every comment, every person who came back for the next story, that is you, that is yours, and I do not take it lightly. If you subscribed after the last video, welcome. You found this place at exactly the right time. If you are brand new here and you are watching this right now, this is your sign. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell right now. I post new stories every single week, and you do not want to find out what happens in this office from somebody else's comment section. Drop something below before we go any further. Have you ever had someone in your life who felt like home in a way they were never supposed to be? Because I know I am not the only one who has been exactly where I was that night. Warm, unbothered, bathrobe on, completely blind to the fire I had already started with my own hands. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and then stay right here, because what walks through my office door next is the moment this entire story changes forever. I walked into the office the next morning like a woman with nothing to hide. That is the part that still gets me more than anything else, the absolute unearned confidence of someone who has convinced herself so completely that there is nothing wrong that she has stopped even performing normalcy. She has become it. I got in early. I made my coffee. Oat milk, 1 sugar, no lid. I remember that detail with a precision that still feels cruel because it was the last ordinary moment before everything cracked open. 3 meetings before noon, a call at 2. In every measurable, visible, external way, completely, dangerously, catastrophically fine. I did not even check if Felix had replied to my text. That is how deep the denial ran. I had sent a message to a married man about a body massage from my bathrobe at 10 o'clock at night, and by 9 the following morning, I had already filed it under normal and moved on without a backward look. The knock came at 9:17. I know the time because I had just glanced at the corner of my screen. 9:17. I said come in without looking up from my keyboard. The door opened, and the air in the room changed. Not like a storm, more like the way a room changes when someone opens a window in winter. A quiet, immediate, full-bodied shift that makes every part of you pay attention before your brain has caught up with why. Something ancient in the human body that recognizes a change in atmosphere before you can name it or explain it or defend against it. I looked up. Rose Sizer closed the door behind her. I knew who she was before a single word passed between us. Felix had a photo of her on his desk, the two of them at some coastal holiday. She was laughing at something off camera, hair wild from the wind, entirely unguarded. I had looked at that photo more times than I had ever admitted to myself. Every single time I told myself it made me feel nothing. I had been lying about that too. Standing in my office, she was so much more than a photograph. Tall, immaculate, composed in the specific, costly way of a woman who rehearsed every single word of this moment in her car before she walked through the building. Her coat was still on. She had not planned to stay long. She had not come here to settle in or make herself comfortable. She had come here to collect something she had decided, finally, she was owed.
She did not sit down. She looked at me the way women look at each other when they already know everything and have come not to discover the truth, but to make absolutely certain that the other person understands they know it. The look that says, I have been watching the evidence of this accumulate for months. I have been living inside the consequences of this for months, and I have finally decided to stop pretending I haven't. Every woman watching this right now knows that look, and every woman knows which side of it is worse to be standing on. My mouth opened. Some useless automatic version of, "Hi, can I help you?" began forming itself in my throat. The professional reflex, the performative normalcy, the last desperate reach for the story that everything was fine. Rose reached into a bag. She placed a single sheet of paper on my desk and slid it toward me, slowly, deliberately, with the calm of a woman who has been rehearsing this exact gesture for days, without a single word. My text, printed, time-stamped. Thank you for the body massage. You always know exactly what I need. The room tilted. And beneath the cold, sick drop in my stomach, beneath my hands going completely still on my keyboard, beneath the sudden awareness of every breath I was taking, something I had not prepared for arose through the center of my chest. Relief. Like a door I had been pressing my entire body weight against for a year had finally, irrevocably swung open, like something that had been living in the walls of my chest had been released. I did not want to feel that. I want to be completely honest with you about how much I did not want to feel that. Because relief is not the feeling of an innocent woman. Relief is the feeling of someone who has been carrying something heavy and has just been caught and is, on some cellular level, desperately glad to finally put it down. Rose was looking at me, waiting. The silence between us was a living thing with its own temperature and its own weight. And then she opened her mouth, and what she said dissolved the relief so completely, so instantly, that it felt like it had never existed at all. She did not raise her voice. I had braced for screaming, for the kind of unhinged fury you can dismiss afterward as proof that the other person is the real problem here. I had braced, in the small, calculating part of my brain still functioning, for a performance I could critique and distance myself from. Rose Sizer did not perform. She sat down slowly, deliberately, with the measured grace of a woman who had decided every detail of this before she ever left her house. She folded her hands on top of the printed screenshot between us. She looked at me with eyes that were completely, terrifyingly, almost inhumanly steady. And then she said, in a voice so quiet and so precise and so absolutely final it made the skin pull tight across the back of my neck, "I did not come here to ask what his hands were doing on your shoulders. I came here to look at the woman who thinks she can buy warmth with someone else's husband. Not, what is this? Not, are you sleeping with my husband? Not a single syllable above a conversational register. Just that line, final as a verdict, sharp as a blade that has been sharpened for months, delivered like a woman who has nothing left to lose and everything left to say."
I opened my mouth, The crisis explanation, the stress, the shoulders. It was 20 minutes. It was nothing. We were colleagues. We were just... I did not ask about him, Rose said, quietly, finally. I asked about you. I stopped. She let the silence sit between us, let it settle and expand and fill every corner of the room. And then something changed in her face, not dramatically, not all at once, the smallest thing, one muscle in her jaw releasing, like a knot held so long the body has forgotten what it feels like to let go. "Do you know what it is like?" she said, her voice dropping into something raw and specific and clearly very old, something pressing against the bone from the inside, to reach for your husband in the dark and feel him flinch? I did not answer. "Do you know what it is like to watch the person you built your entire life around come home lighter, actually lighter, visibly lighter, and know, without being told, without any evidence you can point to, that whatever is giving him that lightness is happening somewhere you were not, with a name you do not even know yet, over and over and over for months, while you lie awake in the dark, asking yourself what you did wrong?" Her voice cracked, just once, just barely, a single fracture in the composure she had driven here with, rehearsed here with, sat down across from me with, and I understood, fully, finally, completely, with nowhere left to hide, that Rose had not come here because of a text message. She had been here for a long time. She had just finally found the address. She was not the villain of a story about two colleagues who got too close. She was a woman who had been watching her marriage, the thing she had built her life inside of, the fruit she had tended and believed in, go rotten from the inside, while the outside remained perfectly, deceptively beautiful, reaching for it every day, finding it beautiful, finding it cold, not yet understanding that something had gotten in and been eating it from the center outward, patient, invisible, looking exactly like warmth from the outside. Now she understood. Now she had the name of the worm. And she looked at me the way you look at something that has been consuming the thing you love most in the world, quietly, in the dark, while you were not watching closely enough. She stood, and I watched something move through her entire body, shoulders, hands, the line of her jaw, something compressed for so long that no amount of composure and no amount of rehearsal could contain it for one moment longer. "I want you to know," she whispered, "that I have never done anything like this in my life." Her hand moved. The slap landed so hard the room went white. My head turned with the force of it. The coffee left my hand without me deciding to release it. It hit the desk and spread, slowly, darkly, permanently across my keyboard, across the edge of my papers, across everything. That stain was not just coffee. That stain was every screen I had angled away, every text sent at 9:30 at night about nothing and everything. Every time I had felt his absence like a loss and told myself it was tiredness. Every warning I had looked at directly and chosen not to see. Every bite of the peach. Every single one. Spreading across the clean surface of everything I had told myself I was. Permanent, irreversible, visible to anyone in the room. The office went absolutely silent. The kind of silent where you become aware of your own heartbeat, where the hum of the building sounds like the only thing left in the world, where you understand, in the marrow of your bones, that something has just ended and something else has just begun, and you will not know for a very long time which one was worse to lose. I stood there, hand pressed to my cheek, ears ringing, the taste of shock cold and metallic in my mouth, and Rose stood across from me, chest heaving, something wild and broken and almost, underneath everything else, relieved moving through her eyes. She was waiting to see what I would do. I did not crumble, not bravado, not a decision, something older than both, a refusal that lived below thought, below strategy, below everything rational and considered. My hand was pressed to my cheek, and the room was ringing, and the coffee was still spreading, and something in the deepest part of me simply, completely, with no drama at all, refused to fold. I straightened up all the way. I looked Rose Sizer directly, fully, unflinchingly in the eye, and I returned the slap. Clean, flat, final. The sound of it filled the office like a full stop at the end of a sentence that had been running on without punctuation for an entire year. Rose's head turned, her hand flew to her face exactly the way mine had, and for one suspended, airless, extraordinary moment, we stood on opposite sides of my desk like two women who had just stepped off a cliff together and had not yet looked down to find where the ground had gone.
The silence that followed was a different kind entirely. Not stunned, not shocked, waited. A year of wait, a year of coffee cups placed on desks and nicknames and late evenings and a bathrobe and a text message and a printed page with a time stamp, all of it compressed into the air between us, dense and real and entirely, finally impossible to call nothing. And then I spoke, not loudly. That matters more than anything else about what happened next. I did not scream. I did not perform. I spoke in the voice of a woman who has finally, after a very long time, stopped being afraid of the truth she has been carrying and has simply decided to put it on the table. I gave your husband conversation, attention, a shoulder massage after a 12-hour crisis that he stayed for because nobody else did. That is what I gave him. Yes, I let it become more than it should have been. I owned the nickname and the late nights and the fact that I let myself need something from a man who had made promises to you. I own all of it. I held her gaze. But I will not stand in my own office and be the only one who owns anything today. You did not lose him to me. You lost him to the silence you built around him before I ever knew his coffee order. And deep down, Rose, you already know that. You have known that for longer than I have been in this building. Something moved across Rose's face that was not anger, and was not grief, and was not quite either. Something in between, something that looked, from where I was standing, like the specific expression of a person hearing a true thing they have been refusing to hear for a very long time. The room held its breath. The door opened. Felix stood in the doorway. He had clearly walked in somewhere in the middle of my last sentence, frozen in the precise way of a person whose brain is processing several catastrophic things simultaneously and has not yet determined which one demands a response first. His eyes moved, Rose, then me, then the dark stain still spreading across my keyboard, then the printed text between us, then back to Rose. He had heard it. All of it, every word, and his face did something I had never once seen it do in a full year of watching it from 2 desks away. It went completely, utterly, profoundly still. Not shocked, not surprised, not the face of a man confronting something he could not have anticipated, the stillness of a man who had known on some level that this room was always coming, who had been walking toward it for months, who had, in some part of himself he never examined out loud, been waiting for someone else to open the door he did not have the courage to open himself.
The three of us stood there, the wreckage between us as real and physical and undeniable as the mark fadin' on my cheek, as the stain still spreadin' across my keyboard, as the sheet of paper on the desk with my words printed in black and white and a time stamp in the middle of everything. And in that silence, something that had been pretending to be something else for over a year finally, completely stopped pretending. The warmth, the nickname, the late evenings, the bathrobe and the tea and the ghost of hands on shoulders, all of it stripped back. All of it shone in the overhead office light for exactly what it had always been underneath the surface. Not a friendship, not a work marriage, not a harmless closeness between two people who simply worked well together. A slow, quiet, mutually agreed upon escape. Two people using each other to avoid the things they did not want to face alone. And one wife who had been paying the cost of it every single night in an empty silence she could feel but not yet name. Felix looked at Rose, then at me, then at the desk between us, then he took a breath, and he said the thing I have never told anyone. Rose, I did not stay late to help her. He did not look at me when he said it. He looked only at his wife. I stayed because I was afraid to come home. The room did not move. Because coming home meant sitting across from you in a house where we stopped talking 18 months ago, and I did not know how to say that to you, so I said it to her instead. Every single night I stayed late, I was not running towards something. I was running away from us, and I let her carry the weight of everything I was too afraid to bring to you. Rose did not speak. She stood completely still. The composure she had walked in with, the composure she had rehearsed in her car, the composure she had held through every measured word and every surgical sentence, finally, fully, quietly gone. And I understood, standing there with a coffee stain on my keyboard and a handprint still fading on my cheek, that I had been wrong about what I was in this story. I was not the warmth Felix was reaching for. I was the distance he was running into. And there is a very significant difference between those two things.
I deleted the nickname on a Sunday morning. No ceremony, no grief performance, no moment I had prepared for, scripted, or built up to. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee, made by my own hands, exactly how I like it, because I had finally remembered that I always knew how to do this for myself. And I opened my contacts and changed it back. Felix Sizer, 2 words, a colleague, nothing more and nothing less than that. I sat for a long time looking at those 2 words, waiting to feel the devastation I was certain was coming. I had been so sure it would feel like loss, like amputation, like the grief of something essential taken from the structure of your days and leaving everything else slightly unstable. It did not feel like that. It felt like putting down something heavy I had carried so long I had forgotten it had weight. That is the thing nobody tells you about the comfortable lies you build your life inside of. They do not feel like lies while you are living in them. They feel like warmth. They feel like being known. They feel like the safest and most real place you have ever built. And it is only when the walls come down that you understand the warmth was never free. Somebody was always paying for it. You just arranged things very carefully, so consistently, with such practiced ease, so that you would never have to see the bill arrive. This is what the peach always was. Sweet on the outside, rotten at the core. And I had taken bite after bite for a year and called it nourishment, called it friendship, called it nothing,
because nothing was the most convenient name for something I was not prepared to examine honestly. The worm had been inside from the beginning. I had let it in myself. I just could not see it until someone else bit down and showed me what I had been eating.
I stopped texting him things that had nothing to do with work. I stopped angling my screen away. I stopped checking my phone differently when his name appeared. I gave back the version of him I had no right to keep, the Fifi version, the you always know what I need version, the late evening version, the bathrobe version, the version that was never mine, and I let him just be Felix again. A person at work, a colleague, someone I am courteous and professional with, and nothing more. It was uncomfortable in the way that only the right things are uncomfortable, the way that only the true things ache when you first stop pretending they do not. I do not know if Felix and Rose survived. I have not asked. That chapter belongs entirely to them, and honestly, whatever its outcome, it was always theirs. I was never a character in their story. I was an escape hatch. And there is a particular humility required to sit with that truth without softening it into something more flattering. I do not know if what I did over that year makes me a bad person or just a human one who made 100 small, quiet choices that added up to something she cannot be proud of. I have sat with both versions. Neither fits completely. Both fit partially. I suspect that is true of most of the things we do that we cannot fully explain and cannot fully defend and cannot fully regret. What I know is this: I was starving for something real, and I reached for it in a direction that was always going to cost somebody something. The lie I told myself was that because no physical line had been crossed, no damage was accumulating. But damage does not wait for a line. Damage is patient. Damage works in the cracks. Damage looks exactly like warmth, feels exactly like warmth, right up until the wall comes down and you are standing in the rubble with a coffee stain on your keyboard and a printed screenshot on your desk, trying to remember when you stopped asking the right questions.
There is a saying older than any office and older than any text message and older than any bathrobe and any printed screenshot. Do not drink from another woman's well. And if your own well has run dry, find out why, before you find yourself standing somewhere you were never supposed to be, wondering how the water got so cold and when exactly you stopped being thirsty enough to notice. I know better now. I wish I had known better then, but I have learned that wishing does not rebuild the wall. Only truth does. Only the willingness to look at what you are holding and ask honestly, whose is this? Where did it come from? And what did it cost the person it was taken from? The moral is not complicated. If you have to hide the conversation, you have already crossed the line. If you are drinking from someone else's well because your own feels dry, do not be surprised when the owner comes to collect, and do not be surprised when what they collect includes the version of yourself you thought you were protecting. If you give something a private name, a nickname that belongs only to you, that lives in the space between two people and is not shared with anyone else, look honestly at what you are naming. Because you are naming it something. You are claiming it, whether you say so out loud or not. And if a man tells you that he stayed late in an empty office, not because he wanted to help you, but because he was afraid to go home to the silence he and his wife had built together between them, understand that you were not the warmth in that story. You were the place the cold went to hide. If you are not subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit the button, tap the bell. I post every single week, and these stories only get deeper and more honest from here. You do not want to miss what comes next. To everyone already here, I see you. I appreciate you. This channel is yours as much as it is mine.
Thank you for sitting with the difficult ones. Thank you for not looking away. One question before you go, the only one that matters when you leave this video. Who carried the most fault? Emily, Felix, or Rose? And here is the real question underneath that question. Is the prize, the warmth, the being known, the feeling of being seen, ever worth the lie you have to tell yourself to keep it? Drop your answer below. I am in the comments. I am reading every single one. I will see you in the next one. If you have to hide the conversation, you have already crossed the line.